will call the meeting to order. Ruth, would you take roll, please?
Andy Hitchcock.
Here.
Mike Malloy.
Here.
John Buda.
Here.
Martha O'Toole.
Here.
Cindy Here.
All right. Before we get into the agenda, anyone who will be speaking tonight, we need to swear in. So, Bridie, would you do the honors?
I will. Could you please raise your right hand if you're going to speak tonight? Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Wonderful. All right. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Did everyone have a chance to read those?
Yes.
Yep. Any concerns, edits, things you want to make a change to?
No. Nope.
No.
All right. I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
Ruth?
Andy Hitchcock.
Yes.
Mike Malloy.
Yes.
John Buda.
Yes.
Martha O'Toole.
Yes.
Cindy
Yes.
And my concerns. All right. So the agenda item number 1 on our docket tonight is BZA case number 24-03 for 2 variances, an area variance for square footage and a height variance for an accessory structure. Kyle Dingfelder is the homeowner at 49 Cascades Drive. Mr. Dingfelder, if you'd like to give a little bit of background on what you're trying to accomplish. I think everyone's seen the plans and has read the application, but just kind of in your words, explain what you're trying to do. We'll probably have some questions for you and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, so if you will turn your attention to the PowerPoint presentation. This is a PowerPoint presentation that I put together to help kind of explain the whole story that I'm looking to do here. Right on the cover, you can see a model of my house. My house is not white, so even though it's modeled as white, it is modeled as the same color. It is the same color as the building. But the way that my house is positioned, this is basically the view you will be looking as you come around the street and see my property. Okay. And then if we turn to the next slide, I have a little table of contents of everything that I'm going to talk about within this presentation. For the most part, I'm going to go over everything that this building is going to be used for, how it's going to be used, and why I desire the size that I would like it, and my reasons for it. So, first we're going to talk about the wood shop and garage area, then the wood and tool storage area, the bathroom, the computer room, the shed, the height of the ceiling and the peak, which addresses the second variance, any directional views from what will be seen in that area, and then some HOA confusion that has come up as well. If you turn to the third page, you'll see a picture of a bunch of items that I have made previously in my life. I'm a big woodworker. I've been doing it my entire life, basically ever since I was old enough to operate a power saw. It's a big part of my life. I do not do it professionally. I do own a separate company that does interior remodeling, but that's just interior remodeling. This is just a hobby of mine. Everything on this page has been made for either myself, a family member, or a very close friend. And these are just various items that I've made over the years. Just to kind of show that, yeah, I am a big woodworker. If you flip over again, any questions so far? Okay.
We'll stop you if we do.
Okay, thank you. If you go to the wood shop / garage, you'll immediately see pictures on the right. This is my existing wood shop. This is a hobby use only. I do nothing professionally out of this wood shop. This is actually in my parents' basement. This is my dad's wood shop. It's approximately 29 feet long by 15 feet wide, which measures at 435 square feet. If you take a look at the pictures, you will see we do not have a single square inch of space available in that wood shop. Every square inch of floor, walls, even things hanging from the ceiling, that we just are maxed out on space. My parents live in Solon, not too far away. However, it is almost a 20-minute drive to there. We do have a bunch of large tools. You see a big table saw in the middle. I've got wood lathe on the side, planers, joiners, drum sander, drill presses, miter boxes, everything. You name it, it's a woodworking tool. I probably have it in this essentially single car garage area. The wood shop that I'm proposing in my building is going to be 31 feet by 31 feet, which equates to 961 square feet. A little bit more than double what you currently see in this space. This space is also going to be a dual purpose space, so not only is it going to be a wood shop, it's going to be a garage for my truck. I own a fairly large truck. It's 20 feet, 8 inches long, and it just does not fit in my existing garage. It's too long. My existing garage only measures 19 feet, 8 inches long, so I can't fit in there during the winter. So in the winter, I would like to pull this truck into this area, which then compromises the space as well, for the woodworking area. So that's why I'm looking for a wood shop that's the size that it is, just to accommodate everything that I have. Okay. If you flip it over, go to the wood and tool storage area. I'm in the fortunate position that my uncle, my dad's brother, used to own a sawmill. He has now since sold the sawmill, he's retired and enjoying his life. However, because of that, he has given me a ton of lumber for my life. Approximately 3,100 board feet of lumber. If anyone knows what 3,100 board feet of lumber looks like, the pictures you see here is maybe 2/3 of it. That's not even all of it. I currently have this lumber stored in 3 separate locations, 2 of which I am currently paying rent on, just to have wood storage. So I have to go to this area, pick out lumber, bring it back to my shop, my parents' house, do what I need to do with it, and then turn it into whatever I want. If I need more lumber, I then have to get into my truck, drive back over to where it's at, and then come back. It's just a big time suck, essentially. And having all of this on my property right next to my own workshop would be a tremendous benefit. The other use for this particular room is tool storage. The pictures that you see, you'll see 2 pictures on the slide of my existing garage. These are tools that aren't even in the workshop that you saw on the previous slide. These are tools that I currently own that I'd like to have at my house if I'm doing little small fix-it projects that just don't even fit in my existing wood shop. So I do have them at my house. This will be an area where those will be stored as well. Again, this is for hobby use only. Nothing in any of these pictures that you see is owned by my business or will be used for my business. It's just a complete coincidence that I own a home remodeling company while I'm interested in woodworking as well. Next slide, the bathroom. This one gets a little interesting. Obviously, being in Cleveland, we get a lot of snow, rain, dirt turns to mud, things like that. If I'm working in the wood shop or in the computer room, anything like that, it would be very convenient to have a bathroom in this area, even with a shower. These are 2 pictures of me that were recently taken of different projects that I've done where I've become very dirty. Everyone knows woodworking is a very dust-centric hobby, and you get dirty doing it. So having the ability to use the restroom and not track things into my house would be a wonderful benefit to me. And then, if you read the last line, it says, having the ability to shower before coming into the house is a big marriage saver. My wife would greatly appreciate the ability to have a bathroom in this building. There's no cabinetry in this building. There's no kitchen in it. It's not a house. It's just an area for my hobbies. And this bathroom is just, if I'm doing a hobby of mine, just a convenient way. Okay. Next slide, the computer room. Right now, you'll see a picture of my existing desk and my buffet area there, or my filing cabinet. These two items were sized perfectly to fit into the proposed computer room area. So they will fit in there perfectly. The reason I want to move my computer into this building is in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a picture of my daughter. She's 3.5 months old. She's her first child. When we moved into this house, we knew that it was a little smaller than what we might need, but we knew we could make it work. And this particular wing or room of the house is a perfect playroom. And so we need a playroom for her, which is why I do desire to move my computer out of my existing house into this building, just to give her a proper playroom. We could set it up in the family room, we would just be tripping over a bunch of stuff every time we walk through there. Great, next slide. Final room in the building would be my shed. My house that we moved out of into South Russell, we moved into South Russell in January. So we've only been here for 5 months now. My former shed was 12 by 12 and it was 144 square feet. Which coincidentally, I needed variances for that as well. But my proposed shed, as you can see in the red box, is 21 by 14, so it's 294 square feet. So roughly double the size of my old shed. Because we just moved into this house, I own almost 1.5 acres, 1.4 to be exact. We have a lot bigger yard, so I needed to buy a much bigger mower. And you can even see it in the back of the picture on the top there. It's a 52-inch zero-turn mower that I didn't even need to accommodate at my old house. I just had a regular push mower. And that takes up a ton of square footage in the shed as well. Currently, what you're looking at in these two pictures in my current garage is roughly 300 square feet. And you can even see how jam-packed the machines are in the center there, and then I do have a little wing on the side of my garage that I'm currently using just to pack as much stuff in there as possible. That's currently 300 square feet, which is exactly what I'm asking for in my shed for this building. So there's not going to be very much added space in there. It's just minimal what I need to accommodate what I have. So that kind of talks about everything having to do with the square footage aspect of this building. The second variance that I need is for the height of the building. I'm allowed 15 feet. I'm asking for a 17-foot 4-inch building. The main driving factor behind this, I have a cargo trailer that is owned by my business. I will be 100% honest with you on that. It's currently parked in my driveway. It's where it's stored every single day and night. If you read my tape measure, you'll see that it is 9 feet 3 inches tall. There is a vent on the very top of it that's 4 inches tall, which makes it 9 feet 7 inches. If we ever get a bad winter storm coming or a hailstorm or whatever, I would like the ability to pull this into the garage area of the shop if possible. And in order to do that, I need an overhead door that is 10 feet tall just to fit this trailer into. With a 10-foot tall overhead door, I need to have a 12-foot tall interior height of the shop. And then with the pitch of the roof being 412, that basically equates to a 17-foot 4-inch peak height from finished floor. So that's what I'm asking for that. And we continue to go. The next slide, you'll see some directional views. For these next couple slides, I am standing where the proposed building will be located. So if I'm standing on my property where this building is located, looking north, this is exactly what you see. You see my house and nothing but trees all the way around. There is no one that can see this building from the north that can, if they're sitting in their family room or anywhere on their property. The gentleman immediately to the north of me, his name is Dr. Glenn Goodrich. I do have a letter from him, which is part of the package, stating that he has reviewed these plans with me and he is perfectly accepting of the proposed building. So the only neighbor to the north, directly to the north, has agreed that he is okay with these. If you go to the next slide, if you're looking west, just turn 90 degrees to the west. This is the street that I live on. Okay, I'm standing in the proposed building location. If you look straight out to the street, you see nothing but trees. The HOA owns the property directly across the street from me, and so that will never be built on in the future unless the HOA ever decides to sell that. Again, next slide, if you turn 90 degrees to the left again, you are now looking straight south. Through the trees, you will see a little bit of a house there that is 53 Cascades. Once again, I do have a letter attached to this package from the homeowner of that house stating that I did review the plans with him. He is perfectly okay with everything going on with this building. And then if you turn one more time and look straight east, this is the rear of my property. Again, you see nothing but trees. So the point I'm trying to make here is, yes, people may see the property or see the building as they drive by, but there is no one that will be sitting at their kitchen table, their family room couch, whatever it is, and look out and see this building in their view where it used to have beautiful trees. There are two houses way into the east, but there's about 250 feet of woods before you get to the first house to the rear of my property. And then next, the last directional view, I have an aerial view of my property. Again, you'll see my house there with a proposed building location. And once again, you see nothing but trees all the way around. And then even on my street, you come around the corner, there are only 4 houses that will ever be able to see this building as they're driving to their house. One of them is my neighbor to the north, one of them is my neighbor to the south, and then 2 more houses to the south. So there are only 3 houses beyond me on this street before you hit the dead end. And then one little bit of confusion that I do want to clear up a little bit. If you go to the next slide, on the HOA confusion slide, I reached out to the HOA and submitted my plans to them. And they denied me approval for this building. I'll be perfectly honest, I know everyone in here already knows that, but they did deny me approval of this building. No one at the HOA reached out to me. They never asked me to see plans. They never asked me for a description, explanation, why I want this, nothing. All I did was I sent in my plans as I was told to do. Then 3 weeks later, I received a letter back from the HOA president, Pete, stating that I have been denied. And he listed 3 specific reasons why I was denied. You'll see a copy of that letter in the top right corner there. If you read through it, you'll see 3 bullet points as to why I was denied. The first one is the square footage of the proposed structure. The second one is the height of the proposed structure, which are the 2 variances I'm asking for. And then the third one was your intent to store products, materials, and other personal property related to a business subsequent to building construction. The reason I bring this up is because according to things that I've heard, for example, Pete is the homeowner president. After I received this letter, I reached out to him and said, hey, can we please schedule a meeting and discuss this? I'd like to know more detail as to why I was denied. He said, absolutely. Him and I met up and we talked for almost 2.5 hours about this. Just different things going on in the neighborhood, why I was denied, some gossip around the neighborhood about it, things like that. And this third bullet point was apparently a big topic of conversation in the neighborhood. They did not like the fact that I was storing commercial materials in this building that was on a residential lot. I looked at Pete and I said, that's not the case. It's not at all. Everything that my my company owns is my trailer. That's it. And I still plan on storing that in the driveway. It might be pulled in a couple times a year to prevent a big snowstorm, but for the most part, everything in that building will be owned by me and my wife personally. That's it. So because of that, Pete did reach out to the building department and Ruth specifically to get that part amended. Okay. However, I do believe some damage had already been done amongst the neighborhood, and this is pure hearsay, I'm going to be honest with you on that. I do believe some damage had been done in the neighborhood amongst different neighbors because they didn't like the fact that, hey, it's a conflict of interest. I own a construction company and they believe I'm storing products and running a business out of this building. There's going to be clients there, there's going to be a showroom there, there's going to be a lot of traffic. That is not the case at all. I don't even like people, I don't want people coming to my house. So I promise anyone in the HOA that is not going to be the case at all. So because of that, he has since had that amended. Okay. So the letter now states that only 2 of those reasons are why I was denied. Okay. If you take a look at the other picture in the top left corner, that is a screenshot of a text from Lori Sherbenek, who is my realtor. I just moved into this house in January. We looked at this house for the very first time on Friday, November 3rd at 5 p.m. Deadline to make an offer on the house before all offers were rejected was Friday, November 3rd at 6 p.m. So we had 1 hour. So if you read this text message at the very top, it says this text message was sent from Lori to me on Friday, November 3rd at 9:31 a.m. I knew we had an appointment at this house, and my very first question I needed answered was, can I build an outbuilding with a shop on this property before we even go and look at it? And she responded with a picture of the house with the lot lines stating, here are the lot lines, just FYI, they're trying to figure out if an outbuilding is allowed. There definitely is an HOA mandatory $1,500 to join the lake and $750 per year. I'll let you know as soon as I hear back from them. Okay. The bottom 2 pictures are screenshots from Lori to myself of emails that she then sent me later that day. The HOA finally got back to her and sent her I have a copy of them right here, sent her the land deeds from when, or the land restrictions from when this lot, or this development was originally built back in the 50s, and the code of regulations that we follow today, okay? I read through this document 5 or 6 times before we even looked at this house. There is language in this document pertaining to outbuildings. However, there is 0 language in this document states that restricts any square footage or height of any outbuildings, okay? So there is also a big highlighted area here in the middle. I can read it if you would like. It talks about minimum square footage for houses and dwellings, whether it's 1-story or 2-story, but that's just for houses. When you talk about outbuildings, the only restriction that they put on outbuildings is, I have it highlighted here, only 1 outbuilding may be maintained on each parcel, which is why the size of this building is what it is. I would love to have 1 building as my shop, 1 building as my wood storage, 1 building as my office, 1 as my shed, so forth and so on. However, that is against HOA rules. So I combined it all into 1. So before we even look at this house, I already knew in my mind that the HOA is not able to tell me no on this. So when I got this letter stating that the reasons I was denied was the square footage and the height, that immediately rang a bell in my mind saying, I don't think you're even allowed to do that. When I met with Pete, president, this was a big topic of discussion. How are you able to tell me no when there's nothing in the land use that restricts this? I'll be perfectly honest, he did not even have a good answer for me. He could not specifically state any area in the deeds or the code of regulations that stated you can only have an outbuilding so large. So his reasonings, to me, in my opinion, are not valid for being rejected. Okay? That's pretty much all I have to say on that.
From the board, so you've heard Mr. Dingfelder's comments. I assume you've read the materials in preparation for the meeting. Questions for the applicant?
I have questions, but if there's anybody here who has a pro or con in the neighborhood, should we hear those first or?
I'm happy to defer. Would anyone in the audience like to speak on this?
I'll speak. I'm at
Could you-
61 Cascade Drive. My name is Nelson Axelrod.
Okay.
And I know the building, from my perspective, just does not conform to the city ordinances. And if you allow one person to do this in the community, then what's to say that it can't happen when my neighbors next door to me sell their house and put it behind their, property? I just don't want to look at it. It might be a good-looking building, but it just, the garage he's trying to build is larger than my house. And again, I don't begrudge him the idea of what he's trying to do, but it doesn't, it doesn't mean anybody in the entire village of South Roseville, if we allow this, will be able to do the same thing. If they have the proper, if they have that land, or the equal land, or less land. It's just, I think it opens up a can of worms for the entire village.
Mr. Axelrod, can you confirm, you're driving
Two houses
past,
south.
so you're kind of at the end of the street?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to understand where you are.
And if he was to build a regular garage at a normal size, I don't really have an issue with that at all. But like I said, if I was, I don't want it happening next door to me. And if you allow it to happen here, what's to say that it cannot happen next door?
Appreciate your comments. Would you like to share anything? Yeah, anyone else in the audience? Just want to make sure we're hearing thoughts.
I'm Pete Asper, I'm the HOA president. Just a point of clarification, the objections are for the exact two reasons that we're here today.
Thank you. John?
Okay.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure, no problem. From the photographs, the woodworking looks beautiful, in my opinion, subjective. Looks like a lot of time goes into, I don't know how much time, I think you said most of those pieces were produced by you, maybe some by a friend, but basically.
They were all produced by me, either
Okay.
for myself or my friend.
Oh, okay. I'm curious how much time you would spend or intend to be spending doing the woodworking. I mean, certainly looking at those pieces, it looks like they take a lot of time.
Fair question. Ever since my daughter was born 3.5 months ago, it's been a lot less time.
Mhm.
We'll admit to that. But it is a weekend hobby that I do like to go in to the workshop for maybe 4 hours a weekend, something like that, dabble. And maybe we need a new kitchen table, or my daughter needed a crib, so I built her one, or something like that. So I'd say probably 4 hours a week,
Okay.
give or take.
Sure. I thank you. That helps me a lot. Now, can the truck and I guess I'll ask yes or no.
So they cannot both fit in there at the
Thank
same time.
All right, thank you.
I'll have to pick which one I like better at the time.
All right. The garage that is part of the home,
Mhm.
according to the Geauga County auditor, it's like 567 square feet, roughly 20 feet deep because you can't fit something 21 feet long. So it's about 20 by 29. Do you have intentions to use that garage for storage and
So that would be where my wife parks. She is a school teacher in Solon. She actually had, not that this matters much, but she actually has a condition where her, it's called rainouts, where her fingers basically turn colors if they get too cold. So she needs a place to park her car in the winter.
Okay.
And right now it's just not able to, because I have too much stuff already stored in there.
Sure.
But assuming I do get permission to build this building, it'll mostly be a one-car garage with, maybe some tools in there that I use on more frequent building, more higher frequency that I don't have to walk over to the building to use.
right? I believe you said that in your parents' home, when you showed us the image, or you were describing the image of the current workshop, you described it as approximately one car garage, roughly, square footage. And the garage that is part of this home is effectively a 2-car garage?
It is a 2-car garage with a little side wing.
Mhm.
I may have misspoke when I described the size of my current shop. It's 29 by 15, it's maybe a little bit larger than a current single car. That's 29 by 15. So it's about 9 feet deeper, and if we were to cut my garage in half, it's about 9 feet deeper and, what's the size of a normal garage, 20 by 20, and 5 feet narrower.
All right, just, you said it was roughly 29 by,
15, which is 435 square
thank
feet.
you, that's what I was doing. So 435 versus the current 567 square feet that's in the home already. So I guess just where I'm going there with this is just to understand how much, if there's only one car in that garage, how much other space could be used for storage. Just wanted to understand that.
So if you cut that, so right now my garage is, let's see, I believe my garage is 20 by 20 with a little side wing, 20 by 20, and I think the little side wing is, we'll call it 10 by 10. So 400 plus 100. So my current garage is roughly 500 square feet. Is that what you found on the?
That's about 90% of the number that's in the, okay.
Well, let's say my wife parked in there, and then, so that cut off half of it. So now it's 10 by 20. And now we're even smaller than my existing shop.
Okay. Basically, I wanted to better understand if there was one car in there,
Yeah.
whether there was other.
I used to have a fun car, but that got sold when the baby came.
Not necessarily where I was headed, but anyway, I understand completely. So if you're using the wood shop roughly on weekends,
Mhm.
would you be parking the truck in there?
No. The truck will remain outside unless there's a nice storm, snowstorm, and it saves me 20 minutes of brushing my truck off in the morning.
The reason why I was curious was I assumed if while you were doing a piece,
Oh, it would not be in there.
you wouldn't have it in there. And also, you wouldn't want to have to always move your carpentry work out of the way in order to put the truck in and take. All right. So effectively, the truck's going to be outside, trailer's going to be outside. And it's really a wood shop with an occasional use of the garage. Okay.
There'll be some mobile workbenches that might be able to move out of the way, given the event of an extreme storm.
All right. Thank you. You're really helping me to understand this situation. I guess, what would you say is the minimum square footage you need in a building to perform the woodwork?
I knew that question was coming. To perform just the woodworking aspect of it?
To have a functional accessory building?
You want my honest answer? It's 1,920 square feet. And I understand that's not what I'm asking the question for. But the reason that I put this all together and showed you pictures, I'm trying to condense things down and make them as small as possible. Would I love to have a 4,000 square foot building? Absolutely. But to me, when I was kind of going through and drawing the floor plan of this building up, I kept having in my mind is, okay, how can I make this smaller? How can I make this smaller? And I started taking dimensions of everything I already have and are currently using. I'm like, okay, the minimum I can use is this. The minimum I can use here is this. And I came up with just over
Just again, out of curiosity, since it was submitted with the package, the Realtor's letter refers to a non-functional basement. Okay, but it doesn't describe why it's non-functional.
Okay, so I'm glad you pointed it out because I meant to hit on that earlier. The realtor did some homework for me and realized in the area that I currently live in South Russell, there are a lot of houses with basements. I currently have a basement, I'll be honest with that. However, this basement is basically just a mechanical room with a little bit of area for storage stuff on shelves. That's it. The rest of it is all crawl space. So the ability of me to have a workshop or lumber storage or, God forbid, shed or anything like that in the basement of my home is not feasible. And my house is kind of unique to a lot of houses within the South Russell area because the research that she did showed that within the last year of the houses that have been sold within South Russell, the majority of them did have a basement. And I unfortunately am not one of them.
You've answered all the questions that I have at this time for this moment.
Other members of the board, questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I do. Is that okay next? I guess my first question is to our solicitor, Bridie. So reading this, I was trying to wrap my head around, we have the situation with the HOA and we have just the zoning, right? And am I right in understanding that we would make our decision or make our recommendation or go to vote singularly from a zoning perspective, and then it's up to him to sort out what would happen with the HOA if it's sorted out amicably or not. But is part of our role as the BZA to consider the fact that there's this complicated thing going on with the HOA?
So you certainly can consider it, because you can consider anything, any item. So you can consider the fact that the HOA has denied their request. However, we do not enforce the HOA regulations or its bylaws or its non-approval or approval letters. We enforce the zoning code. So I know it's probably not the answer you want, but it's definitely a consideration. It's a factor you can consider. It depends on what weight you want to give it.
Yeah, but if the HOA represents or proposes to represent the collective opinion of the community, well then if the collective opinion of the community is in the room, well then that's in the room for us to consider. And I'm just trying to filter out loud the HOA thing. So I'll tell you where I'm at. I'm going to say something, and I promise I don't mean for it to be a jerk. That's kind of my superpower. And so I promise not to be a jerk. And so you seem like, honestly, like a very good guy. I appreciate the entrepreneurship, the creative energy, the fact that you're a business owner. I'm totally on board. We don't know each other, but I'm on board. Having said that, I'm really struggling with the ask, right? And so I'm gonna make an analogous argument, and I'm gonna make it a little bit outrageous just to make the point, but I'm not doing it to be a jerk. Okay? And so I live in Kensington Green, and if someone moved into Kensington Green and they said, hey, I want to build an outbuilding, if regardless of the HOA thing, and they said, okay, well, what do you need it for? And I said, well, good news is I collect and restore old fire engines. I'm like, damn, well, that's pretty big, right? And I say, good news is I got 3 super cool old fire engines now, and I got a garage for storing fire engines. And so for that reason, I'm going to need an outbuilding big enough to hold 4 fire engines and my shop for rebuilding fire engines. And so that's why I want a shop this big. And by the way, I also checked out this picture. I also got a really cool boat. And so I have my boat in there too. So because of that, I need an outbuilding that is big enough to hold 3 fire engines, the shop for repairing fire engines, and my boat, which is like super cool stuff to own, right? But I would propose that the neighborhood would go, yeah, that is super cool stuff to own, but in our neighborhood, we don't have those kind of places to store our personal effects, right? And so maybe this isn't the right property for a person who has all these cool things, you know? And so in my ask, the thing I'm pressure testing is I'm wrestling with to what extent the community would be expected to accommodate this building that is really not traditionally in line with the character of the community, you know, because you happen to be a guy who has a lot of cool stuff, right? And so I'm having a hard time. I'm trying to get a hard time getting past that ask. I'm just opening up for dialogue. What do we think about that?
Again, in transparency, I'm resistant to the application based on the magnitude of the size of the structure. 1,920 square feet is larger than the living space of the home at 1,910 square feet, according to the auditor's website. The 1,920 square feet is almost 3 times larger than what the code permits for this size property. Believe me, I feel for the desire to have a structure and have everything you want, but my consideration is on the magnitude of the size. I see the height issue as a direct function of the square footage of the building, because to maintain that angle, the larger the building, the higher the peak. Smaller the building, same, if you maintain the angle, it's possible to reduce the height of the peak to code or less than code. So for me, my primary consideration or resistance at this time is, again, the overall, I'll say my word, massiveness of the structure relative to the code.
So one thing I will say on that, I appreciate both of you guys chiming in on this. That was actually one of the reasons we took the building and rotated it 20 degrees. So as you come around the curve and you can, people like Nelson can see this building as he's driving. We purposely rotated it because my house is not parallel to the street. It's 20 degrees off. So if you take a look at the site plan of it, I don't know how well you can see this, but here's the street, and then my house is almost straight up and down. And so we purposely rotated this building to be perpendicular to the road. So, because if it was lined up with my house, you would see the large sidewall of the building. And because we rotated it, you're gonna see the smaller 32-foot wide side as opposed to the longer 60-foot side. And that was one of our considerations in designing this building is, let's make it narrower in the front so it's not as visible to any neighbors or anyone passing by, but then extend it deep to where, yes, there is that square footage that I need, but it's just not as visible as it could have been.
If I may, I appreciate the intent that would go into that, right? Check it out. You seem like a really good guy, so I'm just trying to think it through. So when I went and looked at your yard, what I thought I took from it was this is almost what I would, in my own layman's words, it's almost like a side yard. Here's your home and you've got a side yard.
Yep.
And I thought, well, is this thing going like back in the woods and I'm like, oh, here's the house and here's the side yard and this other building's gonna be right next to it in the side yard. And so when I'm looking at it from the street, I'm like, house, big outbuilding, kind of like right next to each other. Even though you may have oriented it in such a way that you have the minimum frontage on it, and so I looked at that side yard and I thought, yeah, this big building's gonna go right here in this side yard right next to that house, right? So appreciating what you said, am I right in guessing that it would be in that side yard next to the house, right? If I may, I have one more question. This is going back to the intent for the building. and I asked this with no disrespect, but it's on my mind, so I asked. That nice computer workstation that you have that you would want space for in this building, it would be logical to me that any small business owner would be managing their business out of that workstation. You know, that we've got dual monitors, we've got a whole nice setup, and if I owned a small business, I would manage it in a setup like that, you know, and so if I just met you, I would assume, yeah, that computer room is where he manages his business out of. And so if you were to relocate that in the outbuilding, even if you make the point that this is not to construct things for your business, is it reasonable that you'd be using that computer room as space through which you manage your business?
100%. And you're right. You're 100% right. I guess the challenge, and yes, my computer was owned by myself would be in this building, and yes, I will really be doing all my quotes and drawings and invoicing on that computer. I would challenge how is that different than any person working from home with a company laptop in their spare bedroom?
It's within their house, within the footprint of their house. If everyone built an outdoor office, I think it would change the landscape of the community.
So then, but wouldn't you need to change the code regulations of your property because now your house is a commercial space?
I think we're a little off scope.
Yeah,
It is, but it's dependent on how much of the area is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And then, one other thing I'd like to add to your point, I would love to, I'm glad you drove back, I would love to push this building back about 50 feet. However, did you get a chance to get out and walk around my property?
Well, I try not to creep, but I got a pretty good sense of it.
If you get to the edge, for example, if you get to the edge right here of these woods, there's actually a giant berm that comes up and it goes down, and there's a creek that goes back there. And it goes into a culvert that then goes under my property. I have a couple ground sewers, drains that then go into and exit out the other side of my property. So pushing that building back, is it possible? Yes. Is it financially smart? No, it's not at all. And now I have my building, brand new building setting in the middle of water.
Thank you.
I have a question for the president of the HOA. You rejected based on square footage and height. Does your bylaws state specifically what those are, or do you just follow the village?
We defer to the village.
Okay.
No, there are no restrictions, there's no numeric square footage.
Formula based on acreage or anything?
Correct, yeah, so we just took the two most objective, and then we struck the third, which was more of a subjective understanding of what Kyle had proposed.
I have a question for him also. I drove through the community and drove around to see how many sheds or outbuildings that were built on the, within the community, and I didn't see that many. Are there many sheds, or if there are they set back so that you can't see them? Is that pretty much the?
I would say there's a lot of detached garages.
Yes, that I did notice.
So even, for example, my next door neighbor, who is going to be impacted the most by this building, has a detached garage himself.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's what I would say to that.
So the board here is presented with situations, asking for variances month in and month out. And we've got some criteria that we use. It is not an exhaustive list, but it tries to bring some objectivity to something that is inherently subjective. I think you've heard 4 people, and you'll probably hear a different opinion from the 5th tonight. As we're looking at this, we all have a different perspective, a different bias. We like things differently than one another. Those things that are specifically called out in our zoning code are, if you're asking for an area variance, things we should consider: whether your property will yield a reasonable return, whether the variance is substantial. Is this variance in character or out of character with the neighborhood? Would it suffer, would the adjoining properties suffer a detriment? Whether a variance would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services, whether you purchase the property knowing that the zoning was going to be an issue, whether you can feasibly obviate this issue through some other method aside from a variance, and then lastly, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirements would be observed if we granted a variance. So as I read those, as I think through those, the ones that really strike me are the significance of the variance. So you're asking for roughly 275% of what is permitted by village code. The accessory structure is habitable, and size-wise, it's basically a second house. And I realize that you're not gonna be living there, it's not a bedroom and all that, but it's huge. It's out of character with the neighborhood. As I drove through, I saw sheds, I saw detached garages. There's the pavilion near the lake, but nothing on a property that comes to this size. By your own admission, you mentioned knowing that this possibly is going to be an issue when you bought the house. You can obviate this challenge by making a 700 square foot building. Obviously not what you want, but that is an obvious answer. And then as we've talked about, the homeowners association has said no. Their reasoning is their reasoning. We have no say in that, and quite frankly, no concern. But as Marty pointed out, that's sort of the will of the neighborhood. Next door neighbors said, I'm okay with it, and that's great. But there's still an association that can say yes or no. So as I look at those things on balance, I'm really struggling with being able to approve this. So just want to be clear with my logic and my thoughts, so others on the board and certainly our applicant understand where I'm coming from.
Can I make one comment based on what
Please.
you said? One thing you said that, when I purchased the property, I knew this would be a challenge. The reason I reached out to the HOA to get these restrictions was to verify that yes, I would be able to build an outbuilding and there aren't any restrictions with the HOA. So I guess I would challenge you a little bit on, we knew this would be a challenge when we bought this property. I bought this property thinking, oh, there's no HOA challenging my square footage of buildings, let's go forward.
Okay, that's fair.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Who responded to you back in November?
I don't know. It came from, I might be able to look it up in an email. I just don't know. My realtor handed it all and handed it back.
And so just, I was completely unaware that anyone had.
Okay.
Other questions from the board?
I think, when I saw this plan, I will say I was envious. I think I have an outbuilding that I use for woodworking. It doubles as my shed and all of those, I have to move a lawnmower to do some, all of that stuff. And I thought this was a beautiful design. I think obviously anyone who shares those hobbies would love to see something like this. When I consider these types of requests, I just like, he shared, we consider how does it fit the neighborhood. I put a lot of weight into your neighbors and how it's received by them. I think that, I just would like to say that I'm not against it. I obviously support outbuildings. I think I support someone putting money into their house to, but I think that my suggestion or my feeling is that you can go back and you can find a way to still get that space, get space for you for your hobbies that isn't so large, right? So I think there is a compromise. You can find a design and a compromise that works within the neighborhood, that is okay with your neighbors, that still gives you space for what you want to do. And that's
So how would I go about, I'm hoping this isn't a question I need to ask, but I'll ask it now since you brought it up. Let's say, for example, there is a compromise in between, and I came back next month with a 1,500 square foot building or a 1,700 square foot building, whatever it is, how will I know what that sweet spot is without spending thousands of dollars on drawings every single time? And then be rejected until we find the right number.
I don't know if there's a particular answer, but I think one is, I can't say, I have to be speculating to say, like, I think that there is an opportunity to look at this and say, hey, of course, in my wildest dreams, I would love a space for my shed, a space to store stuff, a space to do the woodworking, but everybody else within the community is finding a way to do those things within the zoning code, or moderately within the zoning code, So, and I also consider, like, hey, you can go back, and one thing I feel really strongly about is like natural barriers. So like, bushes or trees or something that may, preserve their view, or, so they're not looking at it. And those are things to consider. It's not, I can't say with any certainty what you need to do to get an approval, but that's just some recommendations.
Yeah, if I can add, so we can consider what's put in front of us. So if you were to take a 700 square foot design, this board has no say, because you're within code, so you're not here in front of us. The minute it's 701 square feet, then you're back here. Your issues may extend back to this board. But I would say it sounds like you still have an issue with your homeowners association. So there is no magic number. It's not a negotiation with us as to how do we take what you want and what we might be willing to approve. This board doesn't work that way. But if you are able to have a conversation with your homeowners association and kind of work things down, I think if you look at the types of things we've typically approved in the past, there's, if it's reasonable and everyone in the neighborhood says, hey, that actually seems to fit, it makes more sense, I think we're a lot more likely to look favorably upon it. But it's not I can't tell you cut 200 square feet off and come back next month. Like, we just don't work that way. So there is no magic number. I wish I could give you something a little bit more concrete, because I'm certainly sympathetic to the expense of plans, certainly your time, this board's time. I don't know that we want to be going back and forth and, nitpick over, well, it's 200 square feet less. What do we think about it now? Again, that's just not going to work.
The only thing I will say to that, and thank you very much, is kind of to what you were talking about, Mike, is, and these are very little things in the grand scheme of things, but if you take a look at this drawing here, this rendering, we do have landscaping in front of the building to pretty it up. We do have it in my plan. I know that this is just drawn as a white building, but this is exactly what my house looks like. My proposed building is exactly what my house looks like. So it will literally just look like a clone of my house.
Be complementary
on the side. So, we try to do as many things as possible to blend it in with the neighborhood. Honestly, I would like to bring the roof down, because as it stands, it's pretty darn close to the peak of my own house. It may be a couple inches taller by the end of the day. So I would love to bring the peak down. It's just for some of my needs, I kind of need it that high specifically. So, we can certainly look at different ways we might be able to scale this down. One thing that we were actually talking about as well was an addition. If we just attach this right to the house, could that, work for what I'm needing of this? And the answer is yes, we could absolutely make it happen. However, the price skyrockets at that point, and now it's maybe not as financially as good of an investment as it could be. This is not a cheap building to build, and in addition, there's a lot more than that. So in our eyes, we felt an outbuilding would be the best way to go, make it blend with the neighborhood, make it look pretty, and, everyone kind of go their merry way.
Appreciate that. Mr. Axelrod?
It's not about viewing the building from my perspective. I'm sure the building will look beautiful, your home is beautiful, your lot is gorgeous. All right, it's not about viewing the building. I wouldn't care if you put bushes up or not. From my perspective, it's simply the magnitude of the building. And if you are allowed to do this, can this happen next door to me? And what am I going to be? Even if they put up bushes, whatever, it's just, it does not conform to the code of the community, and it doesn't conform to anything in the neighborhood. So like I said, I'm sure the building's gonna be gorgeous. It's just oversized for our neighborhood or the village.
Would you have as much of an objection if I turned it into an addition and made it look like it was a perfect extension of my house?
I don't know, if it's part of your house, then it's part of your house.
Okay.
So, hearing what you've heard from the board, we can vote on the applications as presented to us. We'll vote and that'll be that. You have the option of withdrawing it if you don't think it's going to pass. Either way, I will leave the decision to you. But I just want to make sure you understand, if we deny this as is, you are welcome to come back with different plans in the future that should be, I'll say, substantially different, not minor tweaks here and there. Again, that kind of gets into the cat and mouse game of what will you or what will you not approve. But as it stands, again, we can vote on your application or you are welcome to withdraw.
So is it a clear yes or no? Is that?
Okay. Again, we can take a vote. I'm not in favor
And
of
I'm not
this.
asking you like specifically, are the only two options yes or no?
Yes, there is no third option that we would decide upon as well.
Gotcha. And then if it is no, then it's just have to kind of go back and resubmit and kind of go.
Correct. Correct.
And then is it majority, 3?
Yes, you would need at least 3 of the 5 of us to vote in favor.
Gotcha. Okay. Come this far.
Well, so I would like to make a motion for BZA case number 24-03 for the property located at 49 Cascades Drive. I make a motion to approve an area variance of 1,220 square feet for an accessory structure, allowing said structure to be no more than 1,920 square feet. And I would make that subject to HOA approval and any architectural review board approval that may be required. Questions on the motion?
Your question, was your motion literally just, I wasn't looking as I was hearing you say the numbers. Were you literally just reading the request? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
To confirm, a yay will approve the variance. A nay will deny the variance.
You are correct.
Thank you.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I second.
Ruth?
Andy Hitchcock,
No?
Mike Malloy,
No.
John Buda,
No,
Martin O'Toole,
No.
Cindy Tate.
No.
The second application we have, or the second variance request we have, is for the height. So for BZA case number 24-03 for the property located at 49 Cascades Drive, I make a motion to approve a height variance of 2.4 feet for an accessory structure, allowing said structure to be no more than 17.4 feet in height, subject to an HOA approval and any architectural review board approval that may be required.
Second.
Ruth?
Andy Hitchcock,
No.
Mike Malloy,
No.
John Ruda,
No.
Margaret Jewel,
No.
Cindy Petetion.
No.
So we appreciate your presentation. I think the feedback has been pretty consistent from this board, from members of the community, from members of your homeowners association. My recommendation would be to connect with them and discuss this in greater detail. I think if you are able to allay the concerns of the people that will be impacted by this, and by people, I mean everyone in Lake Louise, you may choose to submit another application. We will consider what you've presented to us, other testimony, other neighbors who are in favor or opposed to it, but that would be the path forward at this point.
Can I ask one question?
Mhm.
So if I did, let's say I made this structure 1,000 square feet, I'm just gonna throw out a number, but it was the same width, but just much shorter, and it had the same peak, so I would still need that 17-foot 4-inch variance. Everyone voted no on that. How does that work then?
So when you present your new plans to us, should you go that route, Dave Osavar will review them and make sure they either conform with our zoning and you are approved to go forward, or that a variance is required. And he'll let you know however many variances you might need, whether it's for the square footage, height, distance from the property line, any number of factors that might come in front of this board. So I can't say that the height won't be an issue in the future, just as it was presented to us tonight, the board said no. Yep.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, no
Thank you.
disrespect, no disrespect at all.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really comfortable.
All right. Any old business? Mayor, did you swear in Daniel? Kevin, close. Did you swear him in as an alternate?
Sworn in, first time we have to use them
Okay,
to replace the left. But the council did approve this appointment.
very good. Any new business? All right, well, it is 8:09. We will adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Thank you.
That was longer than the regular meeting. I know, the records commission is record fast, right? So. I know, I was gonna say, seriously.